You will renew your vows to the crown, or you will step aside for someone worthy of standing beside the Alpha King." Lady Seraphina's voice rang through the great hall, clear and sharp as shattered glass. Nora felt every eye in the room turn toward her, hundreds of pack members and visiting dignitaries watching, waiting, judging. Her fingers instinctively moved to the small silver locket at her throat, the one she never opened, the one that held a truth she had buried so deep even she sometimes forgot it existed. Matthias stood at the center of the raised dais, his massive frame rigid, his jaw clenched so tightly she could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. The Alpha King. Her mate. The man she had loved since she was 12 years old, and he had been a kind-faced 15-year-old boy who brought her stolen cookies from the manor kitchen. The man who did not remember her at all. The silence that followed Seraphina's declaration was deafening. Nora's heart hammered against her. Ribs. Each beat a painful reminder of 3 years of careful distance, 3 years of sleeping in separate chambers, 3 years of polite smiles and formal greetings, while her soul screamed for the connection she could not allow herself to want. She had learned long ago that wanting things, hoping for things, only led to the special kind of pain that came when those things were ripped away. The moon goddess had a cruel sense of humor, binding her to the one person she had spent 13 years trying to forget. The one person whose abandonment had taught her that she was forgettable, disposable, not worth remembering. The Luna has 3 years to accept the king's mark. Seraphina continued, moving through the crowd with the lethal grace of a born predator. Her gown shimmered like liquid silver, her dark hair falling in perfect waves down her back. Everything about her screaming confidence and belonging in a way Nora had never managed to achieve. 3 years to consummate the bond, to strengthen the bloodline, to fulfill her duty to this kingdom. She has done none of these things. The law is clear. If a bonded pair does not complete the mating within 3 years of the ceremony, the bond can be challenged by one of superior lineage. She turned, her ice blue eyes finding Nora across the sea of faces. "I am that challenger." Nora forced herself to stand perfectly still, to keep her expression neutral, even as her world tilted sideways. She had known this was coming. Seraphina had been circling for months, appearing at court functions with increasingly transparent excuses, positioning herself near Matthias at every opportunity, making sure everyone saw how well she fit into the role Nora had never quite managed to fill. The whispers had started weeks ago. The Luna who would not accept her king, the cold mate who kept the most powerful alpha in the realm at arm's length, the orphan girl who had somehow tricked fate into giving her a position she clearly did not deserve. Enough. Matthias's voice cut through the murmurs rippling through the crowd, low and dangerous, carrying the weight of absolute authority that made even the strongest alphas in the room lower their eyes. "This spectacle ends now, Seraphina. You overstep." But there was something in his tone that made Nora's chest tighten, something that sounded almost like resignation, like a man who had finally grown tired of fighting a battle he could not win. He had not looked at her once since. This confrontation began. 3 years of marriage, and he still could not bear to meet her eyes for more than a few seconds at a time. "I overstep?" Seraphina's laugh was musical, practiced, designed to charm rather than offend. "I follow the ancient laws, Your Majesty. Laws that exist to protect the throne, to ensure strong leadership, to prevent exactly this kind of weakness from infecting the royal line." She gestured toward Nora with one elegant hand, the movement somehow managing to be both dismissive and pitying. "Look at her. She stands there like a ghost, like she is already gone. She does not want you, my king. Anyone with eyes can see it. She flinches when you enter a room. She makes excuses to avoid your presence. She wears your ring, but refuses your mark. How long will you allow this rejection to continue? How long will you let her make a mockery of the mate bond in front of the entire kingdom?" The words landed like physical blows, each one finding a target because each one was true. Nora did flinch when Matthias entered a room, but not for the reasons they thought. She did avoid his presence, but not because she found him repulsive. She did refuse his mark, but not because she did not want it with every fiber of her being. She had built these walls deliberately, carefully, brick by brick over 3 years of marriage to a man who looked at her with polite distance, who touched her only when protocol demanded it, who had clearly forgotten the scared little girl he had once promised to come back for. If he did not remember her, then this bond meant nothing. It was just fate's cruelty, throwing her into the path of the one person whose abandonment had shaped her entire life. The law also requires a formal challenge ceremony, Matthias said, and Nora heard the exhaustion threading through his words. 3 years of her coldness had worn him down. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, in the way he held himself apart even from his own Beta and Gamma, who stood flanking the throne, the most powerful Alpha King in generations, and she had made him feel unwanted in his own home. The guilt was a familiar weight in her stomach. You cannot simply declare yourself Luna and expect the crown to fall at your feet, Serafina. There are rituals, protocols. Then let us perform them. Serafina moved closer to the dais, her smile sharp and triumphant. Tonight, under the full moon, let the entire court witness as I prove my worth to stand beside you, and let your current Luna prove hers. She turned back to Nora, and there was genuine curiosity in her expression now, the look of a predator trying to understand prey that refused to run. Unless she finally admits what we all know, that she never wanted this bond, that she has been looking for an escape since the moment the moon goddess cursed her with a mate far above her station. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. Nora felt the words forming in her throat, the denial that would sound hollow even to her own ears. But before she could speak, before she could force herself to play this role one more time, her fingers tightened reflexively on the locket at her throat, and the delicate chain, worn thin from 13 years of constant wear, finally snapped. She felt it give way, felt the slight weight of the silver locket drop, and then there was the sharp crack of metal hitting marble, the sound impossibly loud in the expectant silence of the great hall. The locket struck the floor at her feet, and the tiny clasp, weakened by time and touch, released. It fell open like a broken heart. Nora moved without thinking, dropping to her knees so quickly her formal gown tangled around her legs. She reached for the locket with shaking hands, desperate to close it before anyone could see, before the secret she had protected for so long could be exposed to hundreds of curious eyes. But Matthias was faster. He crossed the distance between them in 3 long strides, his alpha speed making him nothing but a blur of motion. And when Nora's fingers touched the cool metal of the locket, his hand was already there, covering hers, stopping her. She froze. It was the first time he had touched her skin to skin in months, maybe longer. The contact sent a jolt of electricity up her arm, the mate bond singing with joy at even this small connection, and she hated how much her body responded to him, how much it wanted more. "Let me," he said quietly, and there was something in his voice she had never heard before, something raw and almost pleading. His hand remained over hers for a moment longer than necessary, warm and solid and real, before he carefully lifted the locket from the floor. Nora wanted to snatch it away, to run from this hall in this moment and this terrible exposure that was about to happen. But her body would not obey. She knelt there on the cold marble, watching as Matthias brought the open locket closer to his face, watching as his expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something that looked like devastation. Inside the locket was not a photograph, though many had speculated over the years about what she kept hidden there. Instead, there was a small piece of yellowed paper, folded so many times the creases had become permanent scars in the parchment. Matthias unfolded it with careful fingers, and Nora watched his eyes move across. The words written in a child's careful handwriting. She knew what it said. She had memorized every word 13 years ago. "Dear Matt," Matthias read aloud, and his voice cracked on the name. The hall had gone completely silent now, everyone straining to hear. "I know you said you would come back for me, but it has been 6 months, and Miss Clara says I should stop waiting by the gate. She says the son of the new Alpha King probably has more important things to do than remember the weird girl from the orphanage. But I do not think you are like that. You promised. You said when you were old enough, when you had proven yourself to your father, you would come back and take me away from here. I still believe you. I am going to keep this letter until you come, and then I will give it to you, and you will see that I waited, that I never stopped believing. Love, Nora. P.S. I am 12 now. I hope you still remember what I look like." The silence that followed was absolute. Nora could not breathe, could not move, could not do anything but kneel there while her most guarded secret was laid bare for all to witness. She had written that letter the day after her 12th birthday, 6 months after the kind teenager who had visited the orphanage every week for a year had suddenly stopped coming. 6 months after she had learned that the gardener's son Matt was actually Matthias, the heir to the Alpha King's throne, and that his father had died unexpectedly, thrusting him into a position of power that left no room for orphan girls and stolen moments in the kitchen garden. Matthias was staring at the letter like it might disappear if he looked away. His hands were shaking. The Alpha King's hands were actually shaking. "Nora," he said, and her name sounded broken coming from his lips. "You are Nora. You are my Nora." He dropped to his knees beside her, the movement so sudden and unexpected that gasps echoed through the hall. An Alpha King did not kneel. Not for anyone. Not ever. "You are the girl from the Riverside Orphanage, the one who used to hide in the apple tree to read stolen books, the one who saved that litter of puppies during the winter storm, the one who told me that being Alpha did not mean being alone, that the strongest leaders were the ones who remembered what it felt like to be small." Nora felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of all these people. "You did not remember me," she said, and her voice sounded small and distant to her own ears. "When the bond snapped into place 3 years ago, when you looked at me for the first time as your mate, there was nothing in your eyes, no recognition, no memory, just a stranger looking at a stranger." She had thought it would hurt less if she said it out loud, but it did not. It hurt exactly the same as it had hurt every day for 3 years. "I did not recognize you," Matthias said, and the anguish in his voice made her flinch. "Your name was different. Eleanor Rose. That is what they announced when you came to court as part of the orphanage delegation 3 years ago. Eleanor Rose, ward of the Riverside home. I spent 13 years searching for a girl named Nora. Just Nora. No last name, no family. I searched every orphanage in the kingdom. I sent investigators to the Riverside home 4 separate times, asking for any records of a girl named Nora who would have been there between ages 10 and 13. They told me no such child existed. They said their records were complete. The words hit her like a physical blow. They changed my name when I turned 13, Nora heard herself say. The new headmistress said Nora was too plain, too common. She said if I was ever going to be adopted, I needed a proper name. Something that sounded like it belonged to someone worth wanting. The old wound throbbed, fresh as the day it had been inflicted. I fought her for months, but eventually I stopped. It was easier to become Eleanor Rose than to keep explaining why I wanted to stay Nora when Nora was just the name of a girl nobody came back for. Matthias made a sound low in his throat that was pure pain. I came back, he said fiercely. 6 months after my father died, as soon as I had stabilized the kingdom enough to leave for a few days. I went back to the orphanage. But you were gone. They said you had been moved to another facility. but they would not tell me where. Privacy laws. Protection of minors. I tried. Everything. I used every contact, every favor owed to the crown. I searched for 13 years, Nora. 13 years. When the mate bond snapped into place and I looked at you, I saw a stranger. A beautiful stranger who looked at me with such coldness that I thought perhaps the moon goddess was punishing me for something. I never imagined, never even considered, that you could be the girl I had been searching for all this time. Nora shook her head, unable to process this, unable to make it fit. With the narrative she had built over 13 years, "You did not seem to care," she whispered. "When we were bonded, when the ceremony was complete, you just looked relieved that the political necessity was handled. You never tried to know me. You never asked about my past. You just accepted my coldness and kept your distance. Because you made it clear that was what you wanted," Matthias said, and she could hear the frustration and hurt bleeding through his carefully maintained control. "From the first moment, you flinched away from my touch. You arranged separate chambers before I could even suggest we share a space. You attended every function and played the perfect Luna in public, but the moment we were alone, you disappeared. What was I supposed to do? Force my attentions on a woman who clearly found them unwelcome? I thought perhaps you had someone else, someone you loved before the bond. I thought the least I could do was give you space to grieve for the life you had. Wanted and lost. The great hall had disappeared. There was nothing but the two of them kneeling on cold marble, years of misunderstanding and pain stretched between them, like a chasm neither had known how to cross. Nora realized with a sharp stab of clarity that they had been circling each other for 3 years, both protecting themselves from rejection, both convinced the other did not want them, both too afraid to reach across the distance and risk having their hearts broken again. "I thought—" "You did not remember me," Nora said again, because it was the only truth that mattered. "I thought I was so insignificant that even 13 years later, even bound as mates, I was not worth remembering. So I built walls. I made myself cold. I told myself that if I did not let you in, it would not hurt so much when you eventually found someone better, someone worthy of being remembered." Matthias reached out slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was gentle, reverent, and Nora felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. "You were never insignificant," he said, and his voice was rough with emotion. "You were the girl who taught me that power without compassion was just cruelty. You were the reason I became the kind of alpha who built schools and hospitals instead of just expanding territory. Every decision I made as king, I made asking myself what the brave little girl in the apple tree would think of me. You shaped who I became, Nora. How could I ever forget you?" A tear escaped despite her best efforts, tracking down her cheek to where his thumb could catch it. "Then why did you stop coming?" The question that had haunted her for 13 years finally found voice. "You came every week for a year. You brought me books and told me stories about the world beyond the orphanage walls. You made me believe I mattered. And then you just stopped." "My father died," Matthias said, and the pain in his voice was old and deep. "He was challenged by a rival alpha, and the fight went wrong. I was 15 years old and suddenly responsible for an entire kingdom on the verge of civil war. There were alphas circling like sharks, each one convinced they could take the throne from a boy barely old enough to shift. I spent every moment of the next 6 months fighting to hold our territory together, proving myself in challenge after challenge, making alliances and securing loyalties. By the time I could even think about anything beyond survival, you were gone." His hands tightened slightly on her face, as if afraid she might disappear again. "I never forgot you. I never stopped looking. When I finally stabilized things enough to go back to the orphanage, when I found out they had moved you and would not tell me where, I made a vow. I would search every orphanage, every facility, every group home in this kingdom until I found you. But you had a different name. You were hidden from me by something as simple as a headmistress who thought Nora was too common. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. Nora felt something breaking inside her chest, something that had been frozen solid for 13 years. "We are both fools," she said, and a laugh escaped that sounded more like a sob. "We have been married for 3 years, living in the same palace, sleeping in rooms 20 feet apart, and all this time, we were the same 2 children who used to hide in the garden and make wishes on stars. I wished for you," Matthias said softly. "Every single star. I wished to find the girl who made me want to be better than my father. The girl who looked at me like I was just Matt, not the future Alpha King." His eyes searched hers, desperate and hopeful in equal measure. "What did you wish for, Nora?" She had not said her real name out loud in years. Hearing it from his lips felt like coming home after a long journey through hostile territory. "I wished for you to come back," she admitted. "And then when you did not, I wished to forget you. I wished to stop hoping for things I could never have." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of wasted years pressing down on her. "I am still wishing for that second one. It has not worked yet." "Good," Matthias said fiercely. "Do not forget me. Do not stop hoping. We may have lost 13 years to misunderstanding and bad luck, but we do not have to lose any more." He leaned his forehead against hers, and Nora felt the mate bond singing between them, stronger than it had ever been, finally free from the barriers she had constructed. "I know you have every reason not to trust this, not to trust me. I left you once, even if I did not mean to. But I am here now. I am not going anywhere. And I am asking you, Nora, the girl from the apple tree, the bravest person I have ever known, to give us a chance. A real chance." Nora opened her eyes and found herself drowning in the deep gold of his gaze. She could see the boy he had been and the man he had become. The kindness was still there, buried under layers of responsibility and power, but still present, still real. "I do not know how," she admitted. "I have spent so long protecting myself that I do not remember how to be vulnerable." "Then we will learn together," Matthias said. "We will take it slowly. We will rebuild what we had and create something new. But please, Nora, please do not ask me to let you go. Not when I finally found you again." Chatter. Sound of slow, mocking applause shattered the moment. Serafina stood at the edge of the dais, her beautiful face twisted with disdain. "How touching," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "A tragic tale of lost love and childhood promises. It makes for wonderful theater, Your Majesty, but it changes nothing. The law is still the law. 3 years without consummation. 3 years without accepting the Alpha's mark. These facts remain unchanged regardless of how sweetly you reminisce about the past." Matthias rose to his feet in one fluid motion, pulling Nora up with him, keeping her hand clasped firmly in his. "You are right," he said, and Nora felt her heart sink. But then he continued, "The law does allow for challenges, so let us proceed with the ritual. Tonight, under the full moon, you wish to prove yourself worthy of being Luna?" His voice took on an edge of steel that made even Serafina falter slightly. "Then prove it. But know this, you are not challenging some cold arrangement. You are challenging a bond that has existed for 13 years, long before the moon goddess made it official. You are challenging the one person in this world who made me believe I could be more than my father's son. You are challenging my mate in every sense of that word. And I do not think you are prepared for what that means." Serafina's smile never wavered, but Nora saw the flash of uncertainty in her eyes. "I accept these terms," she said smoothly. "The challenge will take place at moonrise. All traditional trials will be observed. The court will bear witness." She turned her gaze to Nora, assessing her with new interest. I hope your childhood romance has prepared you for what comes next, Eleanor. Or should I call you Nora now? It hardly matters. A name cannot change what you are. An orphan playing dress-up in a crown that does not fit. Before Nora could respond, before she could summon the kind of cutting reply that would make Serafina's smirk falter, Matthias stepped forward, putting himself partially between them. You will address the Luna with respect, he said quietly. But there was a growl underlying his words, the unmistakable warning of an alpha defending his mate. Whatever game you think you are playing, Serafina, whatever political maneuvering brought you to my court with these challenges, understand that you have just made this deeply personal. I suggest you prepare yourself well. The trials are not kind to those who come to them with arrogance instead of genuine strength. Serafina dipped into a mocking curtsy, her eyes glittering with something that might have been anticipation or might have been malice. I will see you both at moonrise, she said. And then she swept from the great hall, her entourage of noble supporters trailing behind her like the wake of a particularly venomous ship. The crowd began to disperse slowly, whispers rising like a tide, the story of what had just transpired already being reshaped and embellished for later retelling. Nora found herself alone with Matthias for the first time in months, standing in the middle of the great hall, while servants moved around them with careful deference. She was acutely aware of his hand still holding hers, of the warmth of his skin against hers, of the mate bond humming contentedly at the contact. 3 years of starvation made this simple touch feel almost overwhelming. What are the trials? She asked, forcing herself to focus on the practical, rather than the emotional chaos swirling inside her. I have heard rumors, but the texts on Luna challenges are restricted in the Royal Library. Matthias's jaw tightened. With good reason, he said grimly. Luna challenges are rare because they are dangerous. The trials test everything. Physical strength, magical ability, strategic thinking, and the depth of the mate bond itself. There are 3 challenges. The first is combat, a physical contest between the 2 women, witnessed by the full court. It is not meant to be a fight to the death, but injuries are expected and accepted. Nora felt her stomach drop. She had some basic self-defense training, the kind every pack member received, but she was not a warrior. She had never been in a real fight in her life. Serafina, on the other hand, came from a bloodline of warrior alphas. She had probably been training since she could walk. The second trial is a test of magic, Matthias continued, watching her face carefully. Each challenger must demonstrate their connection to the pack, their ability to channel the moon goddess's power, and their capacity to protect the kingdom. It is overseen by the high priestess and is considered the most unpredictable of the 3 trials because magical ability can manifest in unexpected ways. I am not particularly strong magically, Nora admitted. I can feel the pack bonds when I concentrate, and I have some basic abilities, but nothing extraordinary. She had always assumed her lack of power was just another sign of how unsuited she was for the role fate had thrust upon her. The third trial is the most important, Matthias said, and something in his voice made her look up sharply. It is a test of the mate bond. Both challengers must enter a shared vision space with the Alpha King. It is a form of mental magic that reveals the truth of the connection. The bond that proves strongest, most genuine, most capable of sustaining the partnership required of the ruling alpha pair wins. This is why Luna challenges are so rare. Most challengers withdraw before this trial because the truth revealed in that space cannot be hidden. If there is no genuine bond, if the connection is political or superficial, it becomes obvious to everyone watching. Understanding dawned. Serafina is betting that 3 years of distance between us will make our bond appear weaker than her manufactured attraction to you, Nora said slowly. She is gambling that the truth revealed will be 2 strangers bound by fate, but not by genuine connection. That is what she believes she will find, Matthias agreed. She has no idea what we really are, what we have been to each other since we were children. He raised their joined hands, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent sparks of electricity racing up her arm. But Nora, I need you to understand something. These trials are dangerous. People have died in Luna challenges. If you want to withdraw, if you want to simply walk away from this, I will not blame you. I will find a legal way to end the bond without the trials. You do not owe me this fight. Nora stared at him, at this man who was simultaneously a stranger and the most familiar person in her world. 3 years of marriage, and this was the first time he had ever really looked at her like this. Like she was precious. Like she was worth protecting. Like she was the girl he had searched 13 years to find. The walls she had built around her heart had cracks running. Through them now. Deep fissures that let light and warmth seep through in ways that both terrified and exhilarated her. You would let me go? She asked softly. After everything we just learned? After finding out that we have been each other's lost hope for 13 years? You would just let me walk away? Matthias's expression was anguished. I want you to stay more than I have ever wanted anything, he said roughly. But I want you to be safe more than I want you to be mine. If fighting Serafina puts you at risk, if these trials could hurt you, then I would rather spend the rest of my life alone than watch you suffer for a bond you never asked for. There it was. The boy who had brought cookies to an orphan girl. The teenager who had taught her that being powerful did not mean being cruel. The man who had shaped his entire rule around principles taught to him by a child he barely knew. He was offering her an escape, a way out of this mess without shame or failure. He was putting her safety above his own happiness, above his own needs, above even the sanctity of the mate bond. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. No, Nora said, and she felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like certainty for the first time in years. I am not walking away. Not from you. Not from us. Not from the girl I used to be who believed in wishes and promises. She took a breath, feeling the words align with a truth she had been running from for 3 years. I have spent 13 years convinced I was not worth remembering, not worth coming back for, not worth loving. I built my entire identity around being forgettable. But you remembered me, Matthias. Even when you did not know it was me, you were still searching. That means something. That changes everything. Nora. He breathed her name like a prayer, and she saw hope kindle in his eyes, fragile and bright. I am terrified, she admitted. I have no idea how I am going to survive combat with a trained warrior, or prove magical strength I do not have, or bare my soul in front of the entire court during the bond trial. But I am more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been if I had just been brave enough to try. She squeezed his hand, marveling at how right it felt to touch him, without the weight of misunderstanding between them. You taught me something when we were children. You said that being brave did not mean being unafraid. It meant being afraid and doing the thing anyway. So that is what I am going to do. I am going to be terrified and fight anyway. For us. For the children we were. For the future we could have. Matthias pulled her into his arms so suddenly she gasped. But then she melted into the embrace, feeling the solid warmth of his chest against her cheek, feeling his heart racing as fast as hers. His scent surrounded her, pine and leather and something uniquely him. And the mate bond surged with such intensity it almost hurt. 3 years of denying this connection, 3 years of starvation, and now she was drowning in sensation and emotion and the overwhelming rightness of being held by him. We will prepare you, Matthias said into her hair, his voice rough. I will get you the best trainers in the kingdom. The High Priestess will work with you on your magic. And for the bond trial, all we have to do is be honest. Let them see what we really are to each other. That will be enough. That has to be enough. Nora let herself have this moment, this perfect instance of connection and hope, before the practical considerations crashed back in. "How much time do we have?" she asked, not moving from the circle of his arms. "Until moonrise," Matthias said grimly. "About 8 hours. It is not enough time to prepare for any of this properly, which is exactly why Serafina pushed for the trials to happen tonight. She knows you are unprepared. She is counting on you being too overwhelmed to fight effectively. Then we will have to make 8 hours enough," Nora said, finally pulling back just far enough to look up at him. "Where do we start?" The training yard was brutal. Matthias had summoned his Gamma, a fierce female warrior named Kira, who had fought in more battles than Nora had years of life, and told her to teach Nora everything she could in 6 hours. Kira had taken one look at Nora's formal gown and delicate slippers and muttered, something that sounded like a prayer for patience. "We do not have time for technique," Kira said bluntly once Nora had changed into training leathers. "We barely have time for basics. What we can do is teach you how to survive, how to use your opponent's strength against her, and how to exploit the one advantage you have that she does not expect." At Nora's confused look, Kira smiled grimly. "You are small, and you look fragile. Serafina will underestimate you. She will expect you to fold quickly, to submit like a lesser wolf facing a dominant alpha. We are going to teach you how to use that assumption to stay alive long enough to surprise her." The next hours were pain and exhaustion, and Kira's voice shouting corrections and encouragement in equal measure. Nora learned how to fall without breaking bones, how to roll with a hit instead of taking the full impact, how to target vulnerable areas when strength was not on your side. Her body ached in ways she had not known were possible. Bruises bloomed on her arms and legs from Kira's relentless attacks, each one a lesson in what happened when she was too slow or too hesitant. "Stop thinking like a Luna," Kira barked, after Nora hesitated on a strike that would have hit the warrior's throat. "You are a fighter now. You are protecting your bond, your mate, your future. Serafina will not hold back. She will hurt you if given the chance. You need to hurt her first." Nora gritted her teeth and tried again, pushing past. The instinct to pull her punches, to fight gently, to be the proper and composed Luna everyone expected. By the time Kira finally called a halt, Nora's muscles were screaming and her lungs burned, but she could feel something new in her body. Not skill, exactly. She was nowhere near skilled. But determination. The knowledge that she could take a hit and get back up. That she could fight even when every part of her wanted to quit. "You are going to get hurt out there," Kira said as they walked back toward the palace. "Serafina is a trained warrior, and you are not. But you are tougher than you look, Luna. I saw you take hits that would have put some of my soldiers on the ground, and you kept getting back up. That counts for something. That counts for a lot." The High Priestess Mira was waiting in the temple when Nora arrived, still aching from training. The old woman looked at her with ancient eyes that seemed to see far more than should be possible. "The Alpha King tells me you need to access power you did not know you had," Mira said without preamble. "He tells me you are the mate his soul has been searching for since childhood, even if fate took 13 years to bring you back together. Is this true?" "Yes," Nora said simply, too tired for elaborate explanations. Mira nodded slowly. "Then we have something to work with. Sit." She gestured to the cushions arranged in a circle at the center of the temple, beneath the skylight that let in the afternoon sun. "The magic trial is not about raw power. It is about connection. Connection to the pack, to the land, to the moon goddess herself. Serafina has powerful magic because she comes from a line of powerful wolves. But you, child, you have something potentially stronger. You have a bond forged before the moon goddess made it official. You have a connection built on choice rather than fate. That matters. Nora sank onto the cushions, feeling the cool stone beneath her, the warmth of sunlight on her face. "I do not understand," she admitted. "How can choice be stronger than fate?" "Fate brings people together," Mira said, settling across from her with the ease of someone who had spent centuries in this exact position. "But choice keeps them together. The mate bond is powerful, yes, but it is most powerful when both people choose it, embrace it, fight for it. You spent 3 years resisting the bond, and Matthias spent 3 years respecting your resistance. That was both of your choices. Now you are choosing differently. You are choosing to fight for this connection. That choice will make your magic stronger than any amount of inherited power." They spent the next 2 hours in meditation, with Mira guiding Nora through exercises designed to strengthen her awareness of the pack bonds, to feel the thousands of threads connecting her to the wolves who called Matthias their alpha, and by extension, called her their Luna. Nora had always felt these bonds dimly, like background noise she had learned to ignore. But as Mira taught her to open herself to them, to really feel them, she was overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of it. Thousands of lives, thousands of hearts, all connected to her through invisible threads of magic and loyalty and shared purpose. "You are not alone," Mira said softly. "You have never been alone. From the moment the mate bond snapped into place, you became connected to every member of this pack. They are your strength, their faith in you, their hope, their dreams. All of it flows through these bonds. In the magic trial, you will need to channel that power to show that you can protect and strengthen these connections. Can you feel them now? Really feel them?" Nora nodded, tears streaming down her face from the overwhelming beauty and responsibility of it. She could feel them all. The warriors on the border keeping watch, the mothers in the pack village singing their children to sleep, the farmers tending fields, the scholars in the library, the healers in their clinic, all of them connected to her, depending on her, offering her their strength in return for her protection and guidance. She had spent 3 years holding herself apart from this, too afraid of the responsibility to embrace it. But now, feeling the full weight and wonder of it, she understood what she had been missing, what she had been denying herself and them. "Good," Mira said, satisfaction in her voice. "Hold on to that feeling. When the trial comes, when you need to demonstrate your magic, remember that you are not drawing on your own power alone. You are channeling the strength of thousands. That will be enough. It has to be enough." Matthias found her in her chambers as she was preparing for the ceremony. She had bathed and changed into the formal gown required for the trials, a dress of deep blue that seemed to capture the night sky. Her hair was arranged in an intricate braid, woven with silver thread that caught the light. She looked every inch the Luna, even if she felt like a child playing dress-up. "How are you feeling?" he asked, closing the door behind him with careful precision. "Terrified," Nora admitted. "Sore, overwhelmed, determined. All of those things at once." She turned to face him, taking in the formal black attire that made him look even more imposing than usual. "How are you feeling?" "Furious that this is happening at all," Matthias said bluntly. "Proud of you for choosing to fight. Terrified that I'm going to watch you get hurt and not be able to stop it. The combat trial forbids any interference from the Alpha. I will have to stand there and watch while Serafina tries to break you, and I cannot do anything to help." Nora crossed to him, reaching up to touch his face with gentle fingers. The gesture felt natural now, right in a way it never had before. "You have already helped," she said softly. "You gave me the truth. You gave me a reason to fight. That is more than enough." He caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his cheek, his eyes closing briefly as if savoring the contact. I need you to know something before we go out there, he said, opening his eyes to meet hers with an intensity that stole her breath. Regardless of what happens tonight, regardless of the outcome of these trials, you are my mate. You are the girl from the apple tree who taught me how to be human. You are the woman I have been searching for my entire adult life. If we lose, if Serafina somehow wins, I will find a way to be with you anyway. I will abdicate the throne if I have to. I will not lose you again. Not after just finding you. You will not have to abdicate, Nora said with more confidence than she felt. We are going to win. We have to win, because the alternative is unthinkable. She took a breath, gathering her courage. I have something I need to say before we face this. Something I should have said 3 years ago if I had not been so consumed by my own pain and fear. Matthias waited, his full attention on her, and Nora felt the weight of words she had never allowed herself to speak. I love you, she said, and the truth of it rang through her like a bell. I have loved you since I was 12 years old, and you brought me books you thought I would enjoy. I loved you when you disappeared, and I convinced myself I had imagined how much you cared. I loved you when the mate bond snapped into place and I thought you did not remember me. I loved you through 3 years of distance and silence and misunderstanding. And I love you now, knowing the truth, knowing that we were both just scared children trying to protect ourselves from being forgotten again. She felt tears threatening, but pushed through them. I know we have a lot to work through. I know we need time to really know each other as the adults we have become. But the foundation is there. It has always been there. And I am ready to build on it. I am ready to be your mate in truth, not just in name. Matthias made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms with a fierceness that spoke of 3 years of denied need. I love you too, he said against her hair. I have loved you since you scolded me for stepping on the flowers in the garden because they were alive and deserved respect. I loved you every day I searched for you. I loved you every night I lay alone knowing my mate was 20 feet away, but might as well have been on another continent. And I will love you for every day we have left Nora. Every single day. They stood there wrapped in each other, letting the mate bond settle into something new and strong and real, until a knock on the door reminded them that the trials awaited. It was time to face Serafina, time to prove their bond in front of the entire court, time to fight for the future they had just admitted they both wanted. The ceremonial grounds were packed with wolves from across the kingdom, all gathered under the rising full moon to witness the Luna trials. Nora felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her as she walked into the ritual circle, Matthias at her side until the high priestess indicated he must take his place on the dais with the other witnesses. Serafina stood on the opposite side of the circle, dressed in crimson that made her look like a warrior goddess. Confident, powerful, everything Nora was not. The first trial begins, the high priestess announced, her voice carrying across the grounds with supernatural clarity. Combat. The challengers will face each other in physical contest. The fight continues until one submits or is rendered unable to continue. Are both parties prepared? I am prepared, Serafina said, and she sounded eager, excited even. Nora took a breath, feeling every bruise from training, every aching muscle, every trembling fear. But she also felt the thousands of pack bonds thrumming inside her, felt Matthias's love like a warm anchor in her chest, felt the determination of the 12-year-old girl, who had believed in impossible things. I am prepared, she said, and her voice did not shake. The high priestess brought her hands together in a sharp clap, and the trial began. Serafina moved like lightning, closing the distance between them in a blur of speed and power. Her first strike was aimed at Nora's head, a blow that would have ended the fight immediately if it had connected. But Nora remembered Kira's training, small, fragile, underestimated. She dropped into a role that Serafina did not expect came up behind her opponent and landed a solid kick to the back of Serafina's knee. It was not enough to bring the warrior down, but it was enough to make her stumble, enough to show that Nora was not going to fold immediately. The crowd's gasp of surprise fueled Nora's courage. She did not try to match Serafina's strength. Instead, she used speed, evasion, targeting vulnerable points that Kira had drilled into her over and over. Go for the joints, the throat, the eyes, places where size and muscle did not matter as much. Serafina's frustration grew with each missed strike, each time Nora slipped away from what should have been a finishing blow. But frustration made Serafina sloppy, and Nora learned a brutal lesson about the difference between training and real combat. A wild swing caught her across the ribs, sending her sprawling in the dirt, the air knocked from her lungs. Pain exploded through her chest, sharp and debilitating. She heard Matthias shout her name. From the dais, heard the crowd's collective intake of breath, and for a moment, she thought this was it. This was where she submitted, where she admitted she could not win. Then she felt it. The pack bonds surging inside her, thousands of voices she had learned to hear in the temple with Mira. They were not shouting for her to give up. They were willing her to stand. She could feel their faith, their hope, their strength flowing into her through those invisible threads. She was not alone. She had never been alone. Nora forced herself to her feet, ignoring the screaming protest from her ribs. Serafina's eyes widened slightly, surprise cracking through her confident facade. "You should stay down," Serafina said, circling like a predator. "You are outmatched. Accepting defeat now will save you further pain." "I have been accepting defeat for 13 years, Nora said, tasting blood where she had bitten her tongue. "I am done with that. If you want me to submit, you are going to have to. Break me first." What followed was brutal. Nora took hits that made her vision blur, that sent her crashing to the ground again and again. But she kept getting up, kept fighting, kept surprising Serafina with the kind of dirty tactics that Kira had taught her. A handful of dirt to the eyes, a strike to the throat when Serafina got overconfident, using her smaller size to slip inside the warrior's guard and land blows to vulnerable areas. She was losing. She knew she was losing, but she was not, making it easy. The turning point came when Serafina, frustrated and angry at being made to work so hard for her victory, made a mistake. She overextended on a punch, putting too much force behind it, leaving her balance compromised. Nora saw the opening and took it without thinking. She dropped low, swept Serafina's supporting leg, and used the warrior's own momentum to send her crashing to the ground. Before Serafina could recover, Nora was on her, one hand at her throat in the traditional submission hold. "Yield," Nora gasped, her own body shaking with exhaustion and pain. For a long moment, Serafina stared up at her with genuine shock. Then something shifted in her expression. Respect, perhaps, or maybe just acknowledgement that she had underestimated her opponent. "I yield the first trial," she said clearly, and the crowd erupted. Nora rolled off of her, collapsing onto her back in the dirt, trying to remember how to breathe around her damaged ribs. She had won. Somehow. Impossibly, she had won the combat trial. But there were still 2 more challenges to face, and she had used everything she had in this one. Matthias was there suddenly, kneeling beside her despite the rules about non-interference. The trial was over. He was allowed. His hands were gentle as they checked her for serious injuries, his face a mask of barely controlled rage and pride and fear. "You are insane," he said roughly. "You are absolutely insane, and I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life." "Ribs," Nora managed, wincing as he probed the injury. "Maybe cracked, but I will live." She let him help her to sitting, leaning against him shamelessly. "1 down, 2 to go." "You need a healer," Matthias said urgently, but Nora shook her head. "No time. The trials must be completed in one night once they begin. We continue or we forfeit. She looked across the circle to where Seraphina was also being tended to by her people. The warrior looked furious, humiliated at being bested in combat by someone so clearly inferior in skill and strength. That would make her dangerous in the next trials. How long until the magic trial? 1 hour, the high priestess said, appearing beside them with the silent efficiency of her kind. By law, you are allowed time to recover between trials. Use it wisely. She pressed a small vial into Nora's hand. This will help with the pain. It will not heal you completely, but it will let you function. Nora drank the bitter liquid. Without hesitation, feeling its effects spread through her almost immediately. The pain receded to a manageable ache. Her breathing came easier, and some of her strength returned. It was temporary. She would pay for this later. But later was not now, and now was all that mattered. The magic trial took place in the sacred grove at the heart of the palace grounds, under the full moon's silver light. Ancient trees ringed the clearing, their branches heavy with luminescent flowers that bloomed only on ritual nights. The high priestess stood at the center with a ceremonial basin filled with blessed water, and she gestured for both Nora and Seraphina to approach. The second trial tests your connection to the pack, to the land, to the magic that flows through our kind, Mira intoned. Each of you will place your hands in the sacred water and open yourself to the pack bonds. The water will glow in response to the strength and purity of your connection. The moon goddess herself will judge which bond is stronger, which Luna is more capable of protecting and nurturing the wolves under her care. Seraphina stepped forward first, her confidence apparently restored after the humiliation of losing the combat trial. She plunged her hands into the water with dramatic flair, closing her eyes in concentration. The water began to glow almost immediately, a strong golden light that pulsed with power. Nora could feel the magic radiating from the basin, could sense Seraphina's connection to her own pack, the wolves who had followed her family for generations. It was impressive, undeniably strong. Then it was Nora's turn. She approached the basin with far less confidence, acutely aware of how inadequate her magic had always seemed compared to those from powerful bloodlines. She placed her hands in the cool water and closed her eyes, reaching for the pack bonds the way Mira had taught her. At first, there was nothing, just silence and her own fear that she was not strong enough, not connected enough, not worthy enough. Then she remembered what Mira had said. This was not about inherited power. This was about choice, about the connection she had chosen to fight for. She thought of Matthias, of the boy who had brought her cookies, and the man who had searched for her for 13 years. She thought of the thousands of pack members she had felt in the temple, all those lives and hearts connected to hers. She thought of the girl in the apple tree who had believed in wishes, and the woman she had become who was learning to believe again. The water exploded with light, not golden like Seraphina's, but silver like moonlight, bright enough to make everyone watching shield their eyes. Nora gasped as she felt the full force of the pack bond surge through her, no longer dim background noise but a symphony of connection and power. She could feel every single member of Matthias's pack, from the strongest alpha warrior to the smallest newborn pup. They were all there, all connected to her, all offering her their strength and their faith and their hope for the future. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments, did you see this ending coming? But there was more. Underneath the pack bonds, underneath the connections she had expected, there was something else. Something ancient and powerful that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Nora opened her eyes, still connected to the sacred water, and saw images forming in the glowing surface. A white wolf, larger than any she had ever seen, with eyes the color of moonlight. Behind it, generations of wolves stretching back through time, a lineage she had never known she possessed. "Impossible," Serafina whispered, and Nora heard genuine shock in her voice. "She is from the moon-blessed line, the bloodline we thought was extinct." The high priestess leaned closer to the basin, her ancient eyes wide with wonder. "The moon goddess has revealed a truth that was hidden," Mira said, her voice trembling with awe. "Nora is not an orphan without heritage. She is the last descendant of the moon-blessed Alphas, the original line from which all Luna powers descend. This is why the mate bond called her to you, Alpha King. Not by chance, not by accident, by ancient design." The clearing had gone completely silent. Nora pulled her hands from the water, watching the silver light fade slowly, feeling the revelations settling over her like a heavy cloak. She was not nobody. She was not the forgettable orphan girl she had believed herself to be. She came from a line of powerful Lunas, a heritage that explained the strength of her connection to the pack bonds, the way the magic had responded to her despite her lack of training. Matthias looked stunned, but when his eyes met hers across the clearing, she saw that the revelation did not matter to him. He had loved her when he thought she was just Nora from the orphanage. This changed nothing between them, even as it changed everything about how the pack would see her. "The second trial is complete," the high priestess announced. "The magic has spoken clearly. Both challengers possess strong connections, but Nora's bond to the pack and her newly revealed heritage give her the advantage in this trial. The score stands at 2 victories for Nora, none for Serafina." She turned to the warrior woman. "Do you wish to proceed with the third trial, knowing that you have already lost 2 of 3? "Challenges?" Serafina's face was pale with shock and fury. For a moment, Nora thought she might withdraw, might accept defeat with whatever grace she could muster. But then the warrior's expression hardened into something ugly and desperate. "I invoke my right to the third trial," she said coldly. "The bond trial will prove what everyone here knows, that the Alpha King's attachment to this girl is based on sentiment and childhood nostalgia, not true compatible partnership. 3 years of distance. 3 years of separate chambers. 3 years of a bond that brought neither of them joy. That is what the vision space will reveal." Matthias's growl was audible even from across the clearing. "You do not know what you are talking about," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea what Nora and I have been to each other, what we are now. This trial will be your final humiliation, Serafina. I suggest you prepare yourself for that truth." The bond trial required all 3 participants to enter a shared vision space, a form of mental magic that would lay bare the truth of their connections to each other and to the pack. It was overseen by the high priestess and witnessed by the entire court through a magical projection that would show the vision to everyone gathered. There would be no hiding, no pretending, no walls to protect them. Everything they were to each other would be exposed for all to see. They gathered in a triangle formation in the center of the grove. Nora across from Matthias, Serafina to the side forming the third point. The high priestess moved between them, anointing each forehead with sacred oil and murmuring prayers in the old language. "The vision space will show the truth of your bonds," Mira said. "It will reveal your past, your present, and the potential of your future together. It cannot be manipulated or lied to. The magic knows what is real and what is false. Open your minds and hearts. Let the truth be seen." Nora felt the magic take hold, felt her consciousness being pulled into the vision space. The physical world around her faded, replaced by a landscape that seemed to exist between reality and dream. She stood in a garden she recognized instantly. The garden at the orphanage where she had first met Matt all those years ago. The apple tree was in full bloom, petals drifting on the wind like snow. She turned and saw him there. Not Matthias the Alpha King, but Matt the 15-year-old boy with kind eyes and gentle hands. He was reading under the tree, just like she remembered. And there, climbing through the branches above him, was a 12-year-old girl with wild hair and dirt on her dress, hiding from her chores with a stolen book. "Is this your memory or mine?" Nora asked, and her voice sounded young, echoing the girl in the tree. "Both," Matthias's voice answered, and he was beside her now, adult and solid and real in the middle of this memory. The vision space shows what shaped us. This place. These children. This was where we learned what it meant to really see another person. The scene shifted. She saw the year of visits compressed into moments. Matt bringing her books, teaching her to read the harder words, listening while she explained her dreams of seeing the world beyond the orphanage walls. The day he told her he was actually the Alpha King's son, and she had punched him in the shoulder for not saying so sooner. The promise he made that he would come back for her when he was old enough to make his own choices. Then the scene went dark. She felt the weight of his father's death, saw flashes of young Matthias fighting challenge after challenge, drowning in responsibility and grief, while searching desperately for a girl named Nora, who seemed to have vanished from the world. She felt his pain, his frustration, his growing despair that he would never find her. The vision shifted again. The mate bond ceremony 3 years ago. Nora saw herself through Matthias's eyes, saw how beautiful he had found her, how perfect. She felt his confusion when she flinched away from his touch, felt his hurt when she requested separate chambers, felt his growing certainty that she must have loved someone else and resented being bound to him by fate instead of choice. Then she saw herself through her own memory of that day. She saw the moment the bond had snapped into place, and she had looked into Matthias's eyes, searching desperately for any sign of recognition. She relived. The crushing disappointment when there was none. The certainty that settled over her that she had meant so little to him, that even the mate bond could not make him remember. She felt the walls she had built, brick by brick, each one a protection against the pain of being forgotten again. "I am so sorry," Matthias's voice said in the vision space, raw with anguish. "I am so sorry I did not recognize you. I am so sorry I made you feel forgettable. You were never forgettable, Nora. Never. I just did not know where to look." "I am sorry I pulled away," Nora replied, tears streaming down her face in both the vision and the real world. "I am sorry I did not just ask you if you remembered. I was so afraid of the answer that I never asked the question." The vision showed the next 3 years in flashes. Matthias lying awake in his chambers, aching for the mate who would not accept him. Nora standing at her window, watching his light across the courtyard, wanting to go to him but too afraid of rejection. Both of them trapped by misunderstanding and fear and old wounds that had never healed. Then the vision shifted to show today. The locket falling, the truth revealed, the walls finally crumbling. It showed their confession in her chambers, the love they had finally admitted, the future they had chosen to fight for, and it showed what could be, potential futures spinning out from this moment. Nora and Matthias ruling together, strong and united, children with her wild hair and his kind eyes, a kingdom that flourished under their combined leadership. Love built on a foundation of childhood promises and second chances. Serafina's presence in the vision space was like a discordant note in a symphony. Nora could feel her trying to insert herself into the narrative, trying to show an alternate future where she stood beside Matthias instead. But the magic rejected it. There was no truth in those visions, no real bond to build on. Serafina was connected to nothing here. She was an outsider trying to force her way into a story that had been written long before she arrived. The vision space began to collapse, pulling them back to reality. Nora opened her eyes to find herself in the grove again, tears streaming down her face, Matthias's hand somehow in hers, even though they had started several feet apart. The magical projection above them faded, but not before everyone gathered had seen the truth of their bond. the childhood connection, the years of searching, the misunderstanding that had kept them apart, the love that had survived despite it all. The high priestess spoke into the heavy silence. "The vision has shown the truth," she said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "The bond between Alpha King Matthias and Luna Nora is true and deep and powerful. It was forged in choice before fate confirmed it. It survived 13 years of separation and 3 years of misunderstanding. It is a bond capable of sustaining this kingdom and these people." She turned to Seraphina, and there was pity in her ancient eyes. "Your challenge has failed. The trials have proven beyond doubt that Nora is the rightful Luna. Do you accept this judgment?" Seraphina looked shattered. Whatever she had seen in the vision space, whatever truth she had been forced to confront about the impossibility of her ambitions, had broken through her confidence completely. "I accept," she said hoarsely. "I withdraw my challenge. I ask for mercy in my departure from this court." "Granted," Matthias said immediately. "You are free to leave. But know this. If you or anyone else ever challenges my mate again, the mercy will not be extended a second time." Seraphina bowed deeply, the gesture full of genuine defeat. And then she was gone, her supporters trailing behind her in shocked silence. The crowd began to disperse slowly, murmuring among themselves about the revelations they had witnessed. But Nora barely noticed. She was focused entirely on Matthias, on the way he was, looking at her like she was the only person in the world. "Take me home," she said softly. Not to her chambers, not to the separate spaces they had maintained for 3 years. "Take me to our home, together." Matthias swept her into his arms despite her protest that she could walk, carrying her through the palace like she weighed nothing. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, feeling the mate bond singing with contentment at finally being allowed to connect them properly. They passed servants and guards and nobles, all of whom quickly looked away, giving them privacy for this moment. When they reached his chambers, Matthias set her down carefully, mindful of her injured ribs. The room was larger than hers, more luxurious, but it felt warm rather than intimidating. She could see pieces of him everywhere. Books stacked on tables, maps of the kingdom spread across a desk, a pair of worn boots by the door that made him seem suddenly human and accessible. "I have dreamed of having you here," Matthias admitted, closing the door behind them. "Every night for 3 years. I would imagine what it would be like if you just walked through that door and decided to stay. What we would talk about. How we would rebuild what we had. What it would feel like to hold you without you pulling away. You do not have to imagine anymore," Nora said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "I am here. I am staying. And I am never pulling away again." He kissed her then, finally, after 3 years of careful distance and denied longing. It started gentle, almost hesitant, as if he was afraid she might disappear if he pushed too hard. But Nora had spent 13 years waiting for this, had spent 3 years denying herself this, and she was done with hesitation. She deepened the kiss, pouring all her love and need and determination into the contact, and felt him respond with equal intensity. The mate bond flared between them, stronger than it had ever been, fueled by acknowledged love and chosen commitment. Nora felt it settling into place properly for the first time. All the barriers she had built finally dissolved. This was what it was supposed to feel like. This connection, this certainty, this sense of being exactly where she belonged. "I want your mark," she said when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. "I want everyone to know that I chose this, that I chose you, that we chose each other." Matthias's eyes flashed. Gold, his wolf rising to the surface at her words. "Are you sure?" he asked roughly. "This cannot be undone. The moment I mark you, we are bonded completely. Forever." I have been yours since I was 12 years old, Nora said simply. The mark is just making it official. He guided her to the bed, his touch reverent and careful. The marking was a sacred moment, a completion of the bond that would tie them together in ways that went beyond ceremony or law. When his teeth sank into the juncture of her neck and shoulder, Nora felt the bond snap fully into place, felt the final wall between them dissolve. She could feel his emotions now as clearly as her own. His love, his relief, his absolute certainty that this was right. When it was done, when they lay tangled together in the aftermath of finally accepting their bond completely, Matthias pressed a kiss to the fresh mark on her shoulder. I found you, he said softly. After 13 years, after searching everywhere, after almost giving up hope. I found you. We found each other, Nora corrected, running her fingers through his hair. 2 lost children, who became 2 lost adults, and then finally found their way back to each other. That is our story. That is what the vision showed. Not fate bringing us together, but choice keeping us together despite everything trying to pull us apart. I love you, Matthias said, and the words felt sacred in the quiet of their shared space. The girl in the apple tree, the woman who fought Serafina with cracked ribs and no training, the Luna who connected to the pack bonds stronger than anyone I have ever seen. The last of the moon-blessed line. I love every version of you that has ever existed, and every version yet to come. I love you too, Nora said, feeling the truth of it settle into her bones. The boy who brought me cookies. The man who searched for me for 13 years without giving up. The Alpha King who respected my walls even when it hurt him. The mate who is willing to build a future with me one day at a time. They fell asleep, wrapped around each other. The mate bond humming contentedly between them. The years of misunderstanding and pain finally behind them. When Nora woke in the morning, still tucked against Matthias's chest, she felt the locket's absence for the first time without pain. She did not need to carry that letter anymore. She did not need to hold on to proof that someone had once cared about her. She had the proof sleeping beside her, solid and real, and choosing her every day. 3 months later, Nora stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom. Matthias's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. The mark on her neck was healed now, a permanent reminder of their bond. She had moved into his chambers the night of the trials and never left. They were learning each other slowly, building a partnership that balanced power and gentleness, discovering who they were as adults, while honoring who they had been as children. What are you thinking about? Matthias asked, pressing a kiss to her marked shoulder. About that girl in the apple tree, Nora said softly. About how scared she was that nobody would ever remember her. About how wrong she was. She turned in his arms to face him. I think she would be proud of who we became, who we are becoming together. I think she would be amazed. Matthias agreed. And I think the boy who promised to come back for her would be grateful that, despite everything, despite lost years and changed names and walls built out of fear, he finally kept that promise. Nora smiled, reaching up to kiss him in the golden light of the morning sun. They had fought for this. Through combat trials and magic trials and the painful exposure of the bond trial, through misunderstanding and fear and old wounds that ran deep. But they had won. Not against Serafina, against the past, against the versions of themselves that had been too afraid to hope for. Second chances. In the months and years that followed, they became the kind of leaders their kingdom needed. Matthias strong and just, Nora compassionate and wise. Together they built something neither could have achieved alone. And sometimes, late at night when they lay tangled together in the dark, Matthias would trace the mark on her shoulder and whisper stories about a boy and a girl who met in a garden and made wishes on stars. And Nora would smile and remember that some wishes, if you fought hard enough for them, actually came true. The locket remained in a box in their chambers. The letter inside it a reminder of where they had started. But they did not need to open it anymore. They carried the truth of their bond in their hearts, visible in the marks on their skin, unbreakable in the choice they made every day to keep building their future together. The girl from the apple tree and the boy who brought her cookies had grown up, but the love that had started in that garden, all those years ago, remained as strong as ever, proved through trials and triumph and the simple, powerful choice to never let go.